Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and I welcome you guys to the final review of Fire Emblem Elibean Nights. I said I was going to do a video where I talked about each of the stories, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm also going to show some footage in the background for you guys to watch while I'm talking about the different stories. It's just going to come straight from the heart, not going to be scripted or anything. I'm just going to speak naturally, and I'm going to be talking about each of the stories, what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, what I think can be improved, and basically I'm mostly doing this for the sake of the developers. I think that you guys, of course, also will find some entertainment in watching my review of it, but I'm also doing it to give something back to the developers, because I've just spent a long time playing this hack, and I feel like my perspective, if they want to listen to it, might be helpful to future development, because this hack isn't finished. Arch says he wants to finish it, and I hope he will finish it, because this hack it has a lot of potential. It's pretty unpolished right now, but it still has a ton of potential, and I definitely really like the concept of mini-stories. I think that that's really great. Most hacks try to create a story from start to finish. I really like the concept of mini-stories. It's amazing, and the name is really good. It really rolls off the tongue, so I really like this hack for that reason. So yeah, as I said, I will be going through each of the stories in the order that I played them. Let us start by reviewing Lynn's story. So Lynn's story, it's very simple. It tells a story about what happens to Lynn after Fire Emblem 7. She pretty much just packs up and leaves Karel. She doesn't want anything to do with it. She doesn't want to be the Marcus. She thinks politics sucks. She just want to live on the plains. And pretty much this is what you'd expect of Lynn. This feels very natural to her, really. And it becomes more a story of Lynn's tribe, really, and the difficulties that they face. They have this nomad who I don't even remember the name of, but the guy that goes crazy pretty much, and it's pretty much like a story of betrayal, if you will, and it kind of sets the precursors for Fire Emblem 6, where the Juta clan betrays Lynn's clan. And you get to see sort of the seeds of corruption being sown among the Sacaeans, and you start to see the infighting of the clans. And I actually really liked Lynn's story. It was a great story. The map was fantastic, a lot of fun to play. It was big, but there was action happening all over the place. I was never bored. There was always something happening every single turn. Action all over the place. I really liked this map. It was a lot of fun. The story was bland, but okay. It served its purpose, and it felt really logical. It really felt like it could have been part of the main game, and I think, if that's the goal you accomplish, I think that's mission completed, because you definitely want these stories to feel like they could be extensions of the main game and not be, you don't want to notice that it's fan fiction. They should be held to the same standard of writing as the real games. This is something Marky Joe said, and I definitely agree with him on that regard. When you design a Fire Emblem fan hack, you should keep it to as high standards as a main Fire Emblem game. And I think there's nothing wrong with having standards like that. It's not unrealistic at all. You should be able to write and design just as good as a main Fire Emblem game. So yeah, I liked Lynn's story. It was great. And from Lynn's story, we move all over to Rath's story. Of course, depending on who you pair Lynn up with, you get either Rath's story or Ken's story. Now, Rath's story, I think Rath is by default paired up with Lynn. Rath's story was not good. This is the first big downfall of the hack, in my opinion. And, well, first of all, the story was weird. Suddenly their friend goes mad and they have to pursue him into the caves, and there's this sorcerer that mind controls him. It's very unclear, and I was not able to really make sense of the story. I understand that there was some shamanistic mind control shit going on, but it didn't feel very good, and the map itself was probably the biggest weakness of the entire hack. The Tracia 776 style Fog of War, combined with the reduced vision that Elibean Nights do. And let me just say that there are so many Fog of War chapters in Elibean Nights, and I don't know why they love Fog of War so much. Fog of War is a gimmick that should be used sparingly at best. And yeah, the fact that there was a bug that caused this map to freeze within 11 or 14 turns didn't help, but I managed to get through it nevertheless. But yeah, this map just felt really frustrating, and many people say that this hack was actually what caused them to stop playing Elibean Nights. Now, I got contacted by Arch, and he has actually made updates to the chapter after I played it. He has actually reduced the density of the Fog of War. I do believe you can see 1 or 2 spaces longer now, which definitely will help a lot, but I still think that the map has some big problems with how it's laying out. The fact that you got this fog and nomad troopers riding out of the fog to attack your units, Generally, when you do Fog of War, you want to be really, really careful with having high movement units like Wyvern Lords and Nomad Troopers, because since the AI doesn't give a shit about Fog of War and attacks you anyway, you run the risk of like having a Nomad Trooper just run out of Fog of War and snipe your spellcaster, and that just feels really unfair and not cool. In addition, there's like siege tomes all over the place in the caves, and because of the Tracia 776 style Fog of War, everything's black and you don't know where to go. And while I can be fan of a Tracia 776 style Fog of War in some chapters, I think that in this chapter it served but only to make the map more frustrating. Definitely one of the weaker stories, and I definitely did not like this one at all. Then we moved on to Raevn's Story, and Raevn's Story is quite simple. It's a story about revenge, an edgelord seeking revenge, you know, strong ties to like Sasuke and Naruto right here, very similar. Raevn goes to confront the killer of his family, an assassin who's really, really strong, and he goes to the Western Isles where he's rumored to find him. And he does run into the assassin. They have sort of like a standoff match, and Raevn ends up killing him. It's quite simple. And then the map actually, then it takes a very strange turn, because then the entire plot actually seeps into Etruria's colonization under Accardo, the corrupt noble from Etruria. And it ends with Raevn and his friends facing off against the entire, like, Western Isle colonization force, which is, of course, a slaughter, which it is. And, you know, from a gameplay perspective, I really like the two maps. They're really great. The first one's a very simple city map where Raevn fights a one-on-one battle, and the second one is like a survive battle where you just have to hold up against, like, an unending swarm of reinforcements. So, gameplay-wise, the maps felt really great, and they were a lot of fun to play. And of course it ends with Raevn dying, which is, you know, quite brave, I must say, on the part of the writers. Like, to kill off a main character like that in a fan hack is a bold move, because it can really piss off some of the fans. You know, you want to be really careful. This is the great challenge of writing fanfiction. You know, killing off a main character like that, many people will feel like you are overstepping your boundaries as a fanfiction writer, and I will use the term fanfiction because this hack is fanfiction. I mean, I can't really describe it in any other way. I actually didn't mind Raevn dying. I thought that it was a fun little thing, actually, and you know, it makes sense because Raevn is the kind of guy who, you know, he doesn't make the best of choices, and it would make sense that his stupid choices would eventually lead to his death. Now, what I didn't like about this hack, there were two major gripes I had with this hack in terms of the story. For one, Raven's crew, you know, Lucius, Geats, who else? Urk, Priscilla. You know, Raven's crew who follows him around, they seem almost like bound to him in a very strange way. Like, when Raevn dies, Lucius utters a very weird sentence. He says, you know, we are lost without Raevn. We don't know what to do without him. As if Raevn was sort of like the driving force of their group. It doesn't really make sense to me that they are just like these lapdogs following Raevn around, and when Raevn dies, they just stand around going like, oh, we don't know what to do with our lives now. Don't they have lives of their own? Don't they have families of their own back home? Like, why are they just aimlessly following Raevn around and not knowing what to do when he dies? It just didn't seem good. And of course, Raven's a massive edgelord and very unlikable, but that's not out of character for him. He was like that as well. And there is this weird thing about edgelords in writing where they tend to draw characters to them because they're so edgy and cool. Although I believe that in any realistic scenario, edgelord characters like Raevn would not have any friends because nobody would want to hang out with them. But yeah, that's just the standard tropes of writing. The edgelord just gets all the attention on all the ladies because they're cool. But yeah, you know, I have no complaints about Raevn being edgy, because that just makes sense, because he is edgy. And the other complaint that I had about the story was Accardo. You know, Accardo is one of the main villains, or one of the side villains in Fire Emblem 6, and his trademark personality traits is that he's very cowardly. He's very stutterish, he yells a lot, and he gets very frightened, and he runs away like all the time. Whereas in this hack, he was sort of like a bloodthirsty warlord, you know? He killed Raevn with his axe, and he was really aggressive, and, you know, it didn't seem like Accardo at all, you know? Accardo he's a cowardly fool who runs away. He doesn't, like, execute the main character. Like, Accardo's the kind of guy who would order his henchmen to execute Raevn. He wouldn't do it himself. So I felt like this hack, the two things that this story did not portray well was Raven's companions. Why are they so bound to him? And also Accardo's personality felt a little out of character for him, because that's not how he acts in Fire Emblem 6. Aside from that, this story was pretty solid. Entertaining to play, and I did enjoy the ending of Raevn dying. I thought that was cool. Anyway, let's move on to the next story, and the next story that we continued with after Raevn was Eliwood's story. Oh boy, Eliwood's story, maybe one of the weakest stories and gameplay maps of this entire hack. I am debating whether to place Eliwood on the bottom. So what can we say about Eliwood's story? Well, it's a very simple story. Bandits are attacking. Literally, that's it. Bandits are in Lycia and they are attacking. And for whatever reason, they're in the castle. Even though, like, that seems like a doomsday scenario, if you ask me. Like, you got bandits inside your castle. That seems like your entire country has gone to shit if they can siege the castle of the Marcus. And Eliwood seems like distant, and he has some difficulties coping with the loss of his father all of a sudden. Even though, you know, he should have been over it by now. And I do believe his mother, you know, she's about to die as well. And he's like very sad about that. And, you know, Ninian tries to cheer him up, but he doesn't want to speak. And Marcus is like, oh, he needs to get his shit together because his country is going to shit. And Eliwood's just brooding, you know. Of course, we do get to find out that Ninian is pregnant with Roy at the end, which is nice. But yeah, this story felt really uninspiring. Why are there bandits in Lycia? What the fuck is Eliwood doing? Why is he being such a shitty ruler that his village... Like, you gotta think about something, like... When there are bandits in your castle, that means that not only is the castle under siege, but villages are being put to the torch all around. Like, people are dying. Eliwood is just sitting there being a little bitch. I lost the, like, if this had been a main story attached to the main game, I would have lost all respect for Eliwood as a leader. He felt like a complete wuss here, and I feel like that's not the way to go, unless you want to focus on him being a bad ruler. Because once they clear out the bandits, and we'll talk more about the actual gameplay of the map, once you clear out the bandits, what essentially happens is that everyone goes like, yay, we defeated the bandits, woo! Now Lycia is safe. No, Lycia was just ravaged by bandits. The people should be pissed. You know, all those burned down villages, there should be riots in the streets about, like, people lost their families and shit. They should be angry, you know. This is the sort of thing that I really react to when hacks are being written. I think you should think about logical things like this whenever you write a story. Like, how are the people going to respond to Eliwood's negligence, you know? And of course, the map itself was really, really boring to play. It had this funny stair gimmick that I never really used because it didn't feel useful. And it was basically just kill berserkers until you find the boss. Now, Arch did tell me that the never-ending spam of berserkers was actually a glitch. It was not supposed to happen, and he has removed it since, so that doesn't happen anymore. But the map still sucked. It was not fun to play. It was a drag. It was just a slow grind throughout the castle, and it didn't feel entertaining or rewarding at all. So definitely one of the weakest stories of this hack, and I think it just needs a redesign from the scratch. I don't think this can be salvaged, in my opinion. Then it segues into Merlinus' tale, which, you know, this is a big gripe that I have with the hack. This wasn't Merlinus' tale at all. Merlinus was hardly present. This was Rebecca, Will, and Dart's tale, as far as I'm concerned, because that's what the tale revolves around. Merlinus is just the main character who rides around in his wagon, delivering goods to villages. And while he's doing this, Will, Dart, and Rebecca are basically, you know, talking about Dart's amnesia. And basically it's about Will and Dart, you know, becoming friends again, and Rebecca being afraid that they're gonna run away, which is exactly what they want to do, because whenever the two of them get together, they run off, because they're very adventurous, and Rebecca doesn't want that, because she wants to have them both home with her. So she's kind of like the concerned mother, and they're like the sons who just want to run off. So the story, there's not much to say about the story, really. I just really wish that Merlinus would be more would be more central to the story. And this is something that Elibean Nights does on multiple fronts, actually. you think that the story is about the main character, but it ends up being about everyone else. And I feel like when a character is in focus, they should be treated as the main character of that story, and it should be about their upbringing or their fate or their thoughts as seen from their perspective. You know, I wanted to see perhaps what Merlinus did before he became a merchant, or maybe, you know, see what happens to Merlinus after Fire Emblem 6 once he retires. Like, I want to see more of Merlinus. I want to learn more of his backstory, more about his heritage, more about his thoughts, you know? But no, we didn't get that at all. Now, gameplay-wise, this map was big wasted potential, and it has, when I say that, like, it had so much potential, you know? I really like the gimmick of rebuilding villages, but this hack fundamentally fails in making the mission enticing and fun to play. Now, as you rebuild the villages, it takes a while before they come back again, but you need to rebuild all 5 villages. But since you can just visit them once they get rebuilt, they close their gates, and you don't no longer have to protect them. Of course, bandits attack you while you do it, as you might expect, but there is no minigame in trying to protect the villages that you just rebuilt. Now, in my opinion, the villages should not be able to be visited. They should just stay open. And as you rebuild them one by one, bandits started coming from all directions, and as you keep rebuilding more villages, you have to spread your forces out more to defend each of the village that you've just rebuilt. And of course, if one of them gets destroyed, you should get a game over. That sounds like an amazing concept for a really fun and entertaining map, and requiring you to use all your units, spread them out, guard the villages, protect them, and it would also exponentially make it more and more difficult as when you rebuild more and more villages, you have more points to protect. So I think that was a big wasted opportunity, and I really think that this hack could be a lot better than it is, because it felt like a really shoddily and badly done map, and again, Merlinus was hardly present in the story at all, so definitely one of the weaker chapters. Although I liked the dialogue between Will, Rebecca, and Dan. Also, please fix that Jerrot's portrait, because he looks like an absolute moron. Okay, after Merlinus' story, we go into Kent's story, which is the second follow-up to Lynn's tale if you pair Kent and Lynn up. I used the matchmaking service to pair Kent and Lynn up, because I was told that was the best story. This map features Lundgren's granddaughter, who wants to take the throne of Kaelin. She has a pretty shoddy claim on the throne. She's sort of like a bastard, but Lindis doesn't want to rule. She just threw her responsibilities away and ran to Sakai, and basically just gave Lycia to Ostia. Now, I don't know how Elibean politics works, if you can do that, but of course, the people of Kaelin are quite pissed because they want to govern themselves. They don't just want to be like a city-state governed by Ostia. And this is actually one of the cases where I'm actually more sympathetic towards the villains. While I agree that Lundgren's granddaughter has a shoddy claim on the Kaelin throne, I think that it's better for Lycia to govern themselves, or for Kaelin to govern themselves rather than just be like Ostia's side bitch. And I think that, you know, Kent should have probably considered just giving the throne away to Lundgren's granddaughter, because it's kinda egotistical that Lynn goes, I do not want to rule, and then someone steps up and says, well, I want to rule, and I sort of have a claim, and then for Lynn to go, or it was mostly Kent who just went, no. And why would Kent be the one to make this decision anyway? I mean, I guess he's married to Lynn. Come to think of it, I just thought about this right now, but why can't Kent assume role as the Marcus? He's married to Lynn, right? Now, of course, if he wasn't married to Lynn, this would have a completely different meaning, but I just thought about this right now. Wouldn't Kent, as Lynn's husband, be eligible for role of Marcus? And Kent would be a stellar ruler, so I don't know why he wouldn't do that. Yeah, I just thought about that right now. I didn't have that written down in my notes. That just came to me as I was talking. But yeah, I think that Eliwood, Lynn, and Hector are all portrayed as a kind of negligent in this hack. They just don't want to fulfill their responsibilities as leaders. They just want to go off and do their own thing, which makes me like them a lot less in this hack, because I think that their job as lords are to rise into positions of authority and actually take the heavy mantle of leadership and actually be good leaders, but none of them seems to really want to be a leader, and it kind of makes me lose respect for them. And, you know, I also have this, you know, Kent's guard is black for whatever reason. Very, really strange. I mean, I guess I'm okay with it, but it just feels really random because as we know, as far as we know, there are no black people in Elib, so where does he come from? I feel like he should have sort of like a conversation with Kent where he goes like, well, when I grew up on those islands off Elib or something, you know, just give some backstory. Why is he black? Like, I feel like it matters, and I don't think it's racist to want to ask that question, you know, because as I said, there are no native black people in Elib as far as we know, so it just feels really random to have him there. But yeah, Kent's story, it was fun to play from a gameplay perspective. I liked Lundgren's granddaughter, thought she was a cool character. And the map was short and sweet for the most part, and it felt okay to play it. It wasn't spectacular fun, but it was okay. Alright, just had to make a little cut right here. Anyway, so we continue with Hector's story. And Hector's story is, again, a story that disappointed me quite a bit, if I'm going to be completely honest, both from a gameplay perspective and a storytelling perspective. So the story of Hector is that people are revolting against him because they don't like him as a leader. Again, we see this common trend of the main characters not being particularly good rulers, and people just don't want them to be in power, probably because they are just not very keen on being rulers. And of course, you know, the meme, Hector builds barracks instead of feeding his people. Hector is very militarized in his rule, which is of course, you know, the right move, considering Byrne is teetering on aggression. But of course the villagers don't like that because, you know, he built barracks instead of feeding them, which they don't like. However, there are a couple things that I really disagree with in terms of the storytelling. So this noble guy, he organizes a rebellion against Hector. But he's very nice about it, because he gives Hector 24 hours to prepare. He sends a messenger saying, like, we are going to be attacking Castle Ostia in 24 hours. Here's some time to prepare. So he's very honorable, this guy. Or stupid, you know, one of the two, because I don't see any leaders who would do this in a realistic scenario. You are going to do something despicable in revolting. Like, you're pretty much breaking every single rule that there are to break when you revolt and try to take the throne. And why would you send your enemy a letter with a 24-hour warning, like, hey, marshal your forces? Seems weird, but yeah. So Hector, what does he do? Well, he just says fuck it and attacks immediately, even though he hasn't even mobilized his entire army. This is a big regression to Hector. If there was one thing I had hoped to see in this hack, it would be Hector growing into a mature leader, you know, finally taking his place as his brother's heir. But it's just the same old stupid Hector that just rushes into things. Like, Hector's biggest weakness is that he is way too emotional and reckless. He just jumps into things without thinking. It's not that he's stupid, he just doesn't think. And what I wanted to see was Hector's transformation from his reckless youth in Fire Emblem 7 to the bold, steadfast general we know him as in Fire Emblem 6. Well, what little we see of him in Fire Emblem 6, but we do know that he is quite bold and very steadfast and pretty calm. But here, we just see old Hector being stupid. Like, oh, you have gotten 24 hours to prepare, and you just waste that and attack anyway. You know, you could have just doomed your entire people to being overthrown. This isn't about, like, he makes it personal. He's like, oh, I am Hector, I just attack immediately. And I think what the writers wanted to portray here was that, oh, Hector's so brave and spontaneous, but no, it's just stupid. It's not brave or spontaneous. When you're the leader of a nation, and you have the entire responsibility of a nation on your shoulders, it is no longer cool and brave to be reckless. In fact, it's just fucking stupid. You're just a bad leader. And I think this is really important to bring forward. Like, the people who wrote this hack clearly doesn't like politics. It comes very strongly forward that they are not very invested into politics, because politics seems to be demonized, but ruling a nation is a big responsibility and a big task, and I think it's very honorable to watch someone grow into the role of a leader. And I feel like this is also a very big focal point of the main Fire Emblem games. In a lot of the Fire Emblem games, with Ike, with Hector, with Roy, we see a lot of the leaders rising to leadership. It's a big virtue to be a leader. And the cool thing about most of the main characters in Fire Emblem is that they don't want the leadership, but they take it anyway. Same with Sigurd and Seliph, you know, they all grow into strong leaders. And that's what I wanted to see in this story. I wanted to see Hector grow into a strong leader, but he didn't. He just went, oh, let's go fuck him over, and he just killed his way out of his problem, like Hector always does. And at the end, I feel like he didn't develop at all. You know, It's just bad. Fargus shows up for whatever reason, you know, it felt really random and weird. And of course, the map itself was way too big. Now, funnily enough, it featured a drawbridge that could be opened, kind of similar to Fire Emblem 4. And in true in true Fire Emblem 4 style, the map was way too big and took so long to complete. Now, of course, the drawbridge gimmick I do like. You know, the entire idea was to use the drawbridge to attack the boss from behind, so you didn't have to go through his heavily fortified front guard, which I definitely like. I think that's cool. What I didn't like, well, I think I fucked up because I lost Sarah, and I'm pretty sure that you had to obtain the lockpick by having Matthew talk to Sarah, which I didn't do, which is why I couldn't lower the drawbridge. Which, you know, I feel like that shouldn't be necessary. Matthew should just be able to do it. You know, he should just be saying like, oh, this is easy, I don't need a lockpick for this, and he should just be able to do it. But yeah, you know, and he also had the side plot with Eric suddenly being honorable and joining Hector, which, you know, I can see you know, you definitely couldn't have killed him because that would have fucked up Fire Emblem 6's plot. So you knew that, of course, you get an achievement for killing him. I have learned later, even though it froze the game when I tried it. There was like, it was cool to see Eric, like, join Hector momentarily, even though he hates him, because he just hates the other guy more. I didn't have a big problem with that, to be fair. But the map itself was just not fun to play, and that's one of the main gripes that I have with the story. Hector didn't develop, he was stupid, and he was Hector, and the map was way too big, and definitely one of the weaker stories of Elibean Nights. Not as weak as Eliwood, but definitely down there with Eliwood. Both Hector and Eliwood got shafted really hard in this hack. Then, after Hector, we then went down to Jerrot. Jerrot's tale is of a young alien commander who has to deal with a corrupt general who raids his own people, and there's like some love triangle shit going on there. He's together with Juno, but you got Siguna, who's a boss in Fire Emblem 6, who has a thing for Jerrot, and she's a bit tsundere about it. And basically, Jerrot finds out that his general is corrupt, and he kills him. And that's pretty much the story. So we also get to know why Jerrot's a paladin in Fire Emblem 6 is because he used to be a halberdier, but then he took a wound at the end of the battle, and he had to mount a horse instead. Something that he says he's not very good at. And of course, Jerrot's hailed as this amazing guy. He's very revered. He's very strong. And I did like this hack. Story-wise, it was okay. And gameplay-wise, it felt a little slow and a little bit icky, but it wasn't like... It started off pretty great, but then you had to, like, conquer your way all the way over to the castle, and it felt really awkward and weird. But what I really didn't like about the story at all was the ending. I didn't really understand what went on. I rewatched the ending, and I still don't understand what happened. Like, the boss, when he's defeated, somehow manages to disarm Jerrot and inflict a wound on him. And then I think what happens is that Siguna leaves Jerrot when he's down because he says Juno. And then she leaves him to die. And he doesn't die, but he recovers. And then Jerrot doesn't like Siguna. It was really weird. I think this ending isn't properly finished, and it definitely feels very, very unfinished. But I don't really actually have that much to say about this tale. It was okay. It wasn't fantastic. And I just... One of the main gripes I have with the way it ended was that, you know, the villain of the story, he should have made Jerrot drop his guard. The fact that Jerrot was able to disarm Jerrot while on the verge of death felt very out of character, because Jerrot's this amazing skilled guy. I don't imagine he would drop his guard very easily. It would have been made a lot more sense if the commander went like, hey Jerrot, look behind you, and then he like stabbed him in the back or something. That would have been a lot more better. Or maybe like he says, okay, I surrender, Jerrot, please don't harm me, and Jerrot goes like, okay, you know, I'll take you in, and then he goes, haha, I hit a dagger in my belt, you know. Or something along those lines would have been nice to see. So yeah, I don't really have anything to say about this tale. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just completely in the middle. Then, after Jerrot, we go to Karel's tale. And Karel's tale is easily the best tale of the entire story, or of the entire hack. Karel's tale was amazing. It features Karel talking to Fear about all the things that he did, and all of the events are taken from some support conversation. So it's all inspired by events that has taken place in Fire Emblem in the main game. We get to see Karel kill the giant, we get to see Karel fight the bandits in Ilia, we get to see him fight, you know, we see how he resolves his conflict with Carla, and he goes up against this Sacaean guy who actually beats him. And that's what causes him to, like, rethink. So this hack basically makes it so that Karel the reason why Karel turns into the Sword Saint is first and foremost because he does something nice, and then he goes like, oh, that was nice, when he kills the bandits in Ilia. But also because he finally gets defeated, and it was actually someone had to defeat him first for him to actually turn his life around. Which I'm not sure if I like this, to be fair, because it kind of robs Karel of a little bit of self-knowledge and self-improvements, because I would like to think that what caused Karel to turn around was his support conversation with Carla in Fire Emblem 7. If you reach an A support with Karel and Carla, Karel comes to the decision that he's not going to kill Carla because she basically surrenders to him. She closes her eyes and she goes, I'm ready to die. I just wanted to see you one more time. And she goes like, yeah, you can kill me now. And then Karel goes, no, I don't want to. And I always thought that that was what made him change his mind, but this hack seems to think that it was this guy, this random swordmaster guy, that made him change his mind, that he actually had to be defeated in combat first. And I feel like that robs Karel's tale of some virtue, because, you know, he goes around killing all these guys, and the only thing that makes him stop is meeting someone stronger than himself, as opposed to what actually makes him stop killing people is finally meeting someone who submits to him, you know? I feel like the Carla story is a lot more beautiful in a way, because Karel gets faced with his own humanity, as opposed to just getting defeated by some strong guy and going, oh shit, someone was stronger than me, I guess I need to stop killing people. You know, I feel like it's simpler and not as great. But the story itself, amazing. I love how it goes from chapter to chapter, all these mini battles and the dialogue in between with Karel talking to Fear. It was absolutely amazing. I loved it. This is like, Karel's story definitely feels the most polished out of every single story. It felt the most unique, and it was the most fun to play. And this is what I hope that all of those other stories would be like. Unique, interesting, fun to play. You know, you want to know what happens next. I remember, like, what really makes me judge whether I like a hack or not is when I forget that I'm Let's Playing. You know? Sometimes when I play, and this is how I feel when I play Staff of Ages and other good ROM hacks and just good Fire Emblem games in general, I forget that I'm doing a Let's Play. I just play it, and I just talk, and at the end of it, I just go, whoa, alright, I'm recording. That only happens a couple times with me, and one of the times where it happened was when I played Karel's story. From start to finish, I just got completely invested in the chapter, and I just played it, and at the end I was like, oh wow, I'm doing a Let's Play, holy shit, I just had so much fun, I forgot. And Karel's story managed to do that with me, and for that it receives a massive thumbs up. I'm really glad that it's in here. It definitely pulled up my my opinion of this hack as a whole. Then, after Karel's story, we continue onwards with Pent's story. And Pent's story was, it started out pretty bad, but once I got into the right mentality, of course the story is that Pent goes to the Dread Isle together with Renault to study morphs. And they go to a ruin where there are some of Nergal's leftover morphs, in particular Ephidel survived the explosion and he's running around. And the morphs, they aren't aware that Nergal is dead, they are still waiting for their master to return. And, you know, the hack touches a little bit upon the creation of, or the story touches a little bit upon the creation of the morphs. Do they have souls? Do they have feelings? The science seems to point to yes, they do. It's just that, you know, they're sort of like failed creations. They're alive, but they're not completely alive. They're like, you know, they're like a failed project in a way, because they are very confused and they don't know what they're doing. And especially meeting Nergal's son, you know, which is just a morph that he created, but he created a son. That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Kind of shows that Nergal may have created the morphs because he was lonely, and the fact that he would create his own son makes a lot of sense. That's actually a story that I wish would be in the main game, because, you know, if you don't know about Nergal, I'm gonna spoil it a little bit for you guys now, so I hope you have all played Fire Emblem 7. Ninian and Nils are Nergal's children, and the reason why he wanted power to begin with was because he wanted to open the gate and be reunited with their mother, a dragon. Nergal, yes, Nergal fucked a dragon. And that's why he wanted to become strong. He wanted to become strong so he could open the dragon's gate and come into contact with his mother. He says that some bad men took his mother away, or took his wife away. That's what he tells Ninian and Nils. Whether or not he's telling the truth, we don't know, but he says, mommy is gone, some bad men took her away. So that seems to think that they were together, but then some people, in Nils and Ninian's words, came and kidnapped their mother. And Nergal basically needs power to get her back, which is why he turned to the path of darkness. But of course, as with all dark magic users, he loses himself and he forgets why he wanted power to begin with. And ironically, all he knows is that he wants to open the dragon's gate and use his own children to do it, which is very sad in a way, which is why I really like Nergal. Anyway, the reason why I'm talking about this is that it makes sense that Nergal would create a child in the form of a morph, because deep in his subconscious mind, he probably really wants to be a father. Or he is a father, but he misses his children. So it would make sense that he would make a son in his own image as a morph to like fill the void, you know. And I thought that was very powerful, and the fact that his son goes crazy and attacks them once they tell him that his daddy's dead is also very powerful, and it was a really fun little twist. It felt really great. You get rewarded with a Heaven Seal that turns Pent into an Archsage. Felt absolutely great. But as I said, one of the reasons why I disliked this map initially was because it felt a little weird. But then once I actually adopted the mindset that this is a dungeon crawl, this isn't a Fire Emblem game. I'm actually in a dungeon right now with a party, and I'm traversing the dungeon and fighting monsters as we go delve deeper into the dungeon. Once I got into that mindset, I started enjoying the map a lot more. But I expected sort of like a Fire Emblem map, your traditional Fire Emblem map, you know, running around, strategizing, killing enemies, you know, using terrain. But no, that's not how this map is meant to be played at all. You're supposed to play it as a dungeon crawl. And as I said, once I started doing that, I started having enormous fun. So that's kind of funny how you can change your own opinion of a map by being in the proper mindset, you know? And of course, this map had Fog of War again, which I'm fine with because, you know, if you do a dungeon crawl, you being able to see the end kind of ruins it. So this is, if there's one map that should have Fog of War in Elibean Nights, this is definitely it. So I am completely fine with this. And of course, it ends with, you know, Pent studying the morph, and then they go home. And, you know, this Pent's an interesting character. He's very distant, and he's very interested in everything. You know, he's very similar to Canas in a way, and Canas is also, of course, present in the story. And towards the end of the story, Renault dies, which is very sad, but also kind of nice that he gets his final resting place, and that they bury him on the Dread Isle, which is, you know, that kind of ends Renault's story. Very nice writing, very nice map design. I really like this chapter a lot. After Pent's story, we go over to Louise's story. Well, it's not really Louise's story at all. It's actually titled Pent's Story Part 2. It just has Louise's icon right there. I was very disappointed by this because, of course, being a massive Louise fanboy, I really wanted to see Louise have her own point of view character or chapter, which I didn't get. This was basically just Pent's story, and the story was quite simple. Pent and Louise return to their mansion in Retruria, and Akkard and Roarts, the two corrupt nobles, send a pack of assassins to take Pent down, because, of course, Pent is going to fuck up their plans, because Pent is Pent. And yeah, you just fight back the assassins, and you get Nino as well. Nino shows up to warn him, and Jafar is there too. You turn Jafar around and you kill the evil assassins. That's it. It's not. You also get to see young Douglas, which is kind of cool. It makes sense that Douglas have a relationship with Pent, seeing as Douglas is the armor knight general, or what is he called, the great general, and Pent is the mage general. And I find it funny that they're struggling to find a suitable mage general replacement, and they can't really find anyone. It's kind of funny that they end up with Cecilia, because of course a running gang in Fire Emblem is that Cecilia is pretty shit mage general. And it's kind of funny to see that they're going like, we can't find a mage general, where could we find one? And it kind of, you know, it makes sense that, you know, they would have to just settle with Cecilia, poor thing. But yeah, as I said, I'm disappointed that Louise weren't more central in this hack. She has like 2 lines of dialogue and a boss dialogue here. You don't really get to see her. I do like the fact that the assassin says, wow, you look like a trophy wife, because, I mean, let's be real, Louise kind of looks like a trophy wife in her appearance. She is a blonde bombshell, but, you know, she's as far from a trophy wife as she could be. It's just that looks can be very deceiving. But I did like that little aspect that, like, he makes fun of her golden locks and, you know, oh, you come to play with a bow, and then she just kills him. So, but yeah, this map was alright. It wasn't fantastic or anything. Wasn't much to say about it at all. You do get to see some, like, shades of Fire Emblem 6 with Akkard and Wards, like, plotting their down take of Etruria and stuff like that. Again, the common trend is politics are bad, people don't want to be politicians, and all politicians are evil. Seems to be the recurring trend of this hack. Then, after Pent's Story Part 2, we go to Igrene's Tale. Igrene's Tale is not finished. It ends abruptly once you cease the chapter. It seems like there's a lot more to it. I really liked what little I saw. The story is basically that Hawkeye is having seizures, and he's about to die, and he's about to pass the torch to Igrene, and they're both going on a mission together in the desert. Igrene wants, of course, her father to rest, but Hawkeye has basically come to terms with the fact that he's going to die, and you get to see some flashbacks with Athos. And you also get to meet Astor, which of course is a really big deal. Igrene and Astor have a support conversation in Fire Emblem 6, which is my favorite support conversation in the entire game. It's very sad. Basically, Astor falls in love with Igrene and they get married. But then of course, Astor gets his memories back and he remembers that he's a spy. And he knows that if he stays in Arcadia, he's going to put Igrene in danger because people are going to come looking for him. And being a spy, they're going to target his family. So he has to leave and leave her behind. And of course, once they reunite in Fire Emblem 6, she recognizes him, but he has to tell her to basically, you know, you have to forget this. And even though he sort of he sort of admits in front of her that he is her husband, but he can't say it out loud. And Igrene basically understands that they can never be together because of his work. And it's a very heartbreaking story of, you know, two lovers who can't be with each other. And it's as I said, probably one of my favorite supports in Fire Emblem 6, if not the entire franchise. And of course, we do get to see the seeds of their love story beginning as Igrene meets Astor and, you know, nurses him back to health. Of course, that's where the story ends, so we don't get to see the follow-up. But what little I did see of this story, I really liked. I'm not a big fan of Igrene being suddenly this buff muscle chick, because she is quite petite and slender in Fire Emblem 6. She's quite a gorgeous girl. And I think that while it makes sense that she is a strong chick, considering she has Hawkeye's genes, and Hawkeye's a towering mammoth of a man, I don't like it when you change the design of a character in this way, you know, away from the original. Alright, then, after Igrene, we go to Legault's Tale. And Legault's Tale, I thought this was not finished, but it's very finished. In fact, Legault has 2 stories. And basically, it's about rebuilding the Black Fang. And I really like this story. Legault is being portrayed as this insane guy, like everyone like, whoa, Legault, you're like the best, and he just kills everything. Like he's very much a Gary Stu in this story, which I find a little odd, because Legault, while he's definitely renowned for his skill, most, like, what Legault does is actually not very honorable at all. Now, if you don't know, Legault's job in the original Black Fang was actually to kill people in the Black Fang. His job was to basically, if someone went rogue or showed signs of going rogue, Legault would go and kill them in their sleep. And Legault wasn't this strong powerhouse or anything. He was just willing to do really dirty tricks to kill his enemies, which is why he was able to take down these monsters. And there's even a support talking about this. If you go watch his support with Isadora, Isadora basically says, like, you know, you don't fight fair, and Legault is saying, well, I can't fight fair because, you know, you'd crush me if I fought fairly. And then Isadora says, no, you can fight fairly, let's have a duel. And then he basically, as she's about to draw her blade, he's cut her scabbard, and she can't draw her blade because, you know, it's gone. And then he basically says, well, now I won. This is how I fight. This is how assassins fight. They fight dirty. And because of this, Legault is not very popular in the Black Fang, because he's sort of the guy who comes in to clean up the mess. And he basically also says that many times, that, you know, I was kind of hated in the Black Fang because I was the guy who would kill the Descenders. And for that reason alone, people would fear me. So the fact that he's suddenly this revered figure that everyone goes like, wow, Legault, you're so cool. Like, at some point, he even has a conversation with the boss where he says, like, are you in my fan club? And the boss goes, yeah, I am. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Legault would not have a good reputation in this way. He is known as the Hurricane, the guy who kills people. People should kind of despise him for that. And it felt a little bit strange. And of course, as the story progresses, Legault saves some members, which I think may be connected to the Fire Emblem 7X hack. I don't know. But he basically makes 4 new fangs, and he rebuilds the organization. And we get to see Uncle John as a playable character, which I really liked. And of course, part 2 takes them into a mansion where they take down a corrupt noble, which is, you know, very, very cool, because that's what the Black Fang used to do. They used to target corrupt nobles that were evil, and they basically go back to their roots. And for the 4 new fangs infiltrate a mansion, and they basically revive the Black Fang like it used to be. A very compelling and cool tale, actually, of revival and going back to your roots, and Legault kind of assuming the leadership. And I really like Legault. He's a cool character. I can definitely see him as the new leader of the Black Fang. I definitely think that's a role he could take on if he wanted to. So I really like this story. Probably one of the strongest stories told, and I'm a big fan. Then, lastly, of course, we go to Zephiel's story. Zephiel's story pictures this descent into madness. Basically, it's Zephiel. He, you know, it shows him going to the Shrine of Seals and resurrecting the demon dragon, and we get to see some flashbacks of his past, why he became the way he was. I have a couple of issues with this story. First and foremost, the Fire Emblem shows Zephiel a vision of dragons, and that's presumably what makes him go cuckoo. Now, I hope that it's not the actual Fire Emblem that does this. It's never properly explained, but I hope that what happened to Zephiel happened inside his mind. Because I really do not like this idea of the Fire Emblem being what corrupted Zephiel, because of course the Fire Emblem has never done anything like this previously. It acted in this story kind of like the Dark Sphere influenced Harden in Fire Emblem 12 and Fire Emblem 3. Like, ooh, you know, an item that kind of makes you go cuckoo and makes you want to take over the world. And this would kind of take away some of Zephiel's personality, if you ask me, because Zephiel was driven to madness by the things that happened around him. And if it turns out that it was the Fire Emblem that influenced him to do it, that kind of takes away some of the moral responsibility and also some of the depth of his character. But it's aside from that, it was a great map to play. It was a lot of fun, and it was fun to see, you know, all the cutscenes from Zephiel's past, showing how awful his father and mother were. And, you know, basically, you know, showing what made him lose faith in humanity and how he was tormented by, especially, you know, the scene where his father, like, that I gotta hand it to the writers here, the scene where his father tried to make up with him, like, and basically said, I'm sorry for being such a terrible father, only to poison him. That was a beautiful touch. That was absolute beautiful touch. And that, it really explains why Zephiel would be devastated by that, because, you know, that is the ultimate form of betrayal, really, and it really shows how awful Desmond is as a human being. And, you know, the only thing I didn't like was that they reused two cutscenes. They reused the cutscene where he meets Desmond for the first time in Fire Emblem 7, and he also reused the cutscene at the end of Fire Emblem 7, which is fine, I guess. There may be a lot of players who haven't gotten the best ending in Fire Emblem 7. If you don't know, in order to get the Zephiel scene at the end of Fire Emblem 7, I do believe you need to clear it on hard mode, and you also need to get a specific ranking. Don't quote me on that, but I know that it's not that easy to get it. It's like, it's considered the difficult ending. So the reason why they probably reused that cutscene was because there may be a lot of players in the community who haven't seen that. But for me, who have played Fire Emblem 7 like 15 times, I have seen it a million times. So of course, it wasn't very impressive to me that they just recycled the cutscene. I think that if you're recycling a cutscene from a main game, it should be at least be seen from a different perspective, or have some bells and whistles on it. Maybe go on a little bit longer than the original to show you a little bit extra. And of course, the big plot reveal is that, you know, the dragon that's guarding the Shrine of Seals is Nils, and I think that, of course, the reveal comes in the form of Nils lying on the ground, and you can see his flute, you know, in his hand, and that's how it ends. And I think this would have so much more effect if you didn't see his hair, because I spotted him and I saw that it was Nils, you know, because it was very obvious. You could see his hair, but you shouldn't have been able to see his hair. You should have just drawn him as a man with a hooded cloak so that his face was completely hidden, and then, you know, you kind of start to speculate, like, who is this guy? And then at the end, when you see the flute in his hand, that the reveal would have had such more payoff, so much more effect, and it would have been such shocking, you know, instead of just knowing that it's Nils. I think most average Fire Emblem 7 players would be able to recognize Nils, and it wouldn't have the same effect. So if you could change that, that would really make for an epic ending, in my opinion. It was a good story. I liked it a lot. Definitely one of the stronger ones. And that, I believe, is all of the stories. So that's been me talking for quite a long time. And wow, holy shit, that's a long review. 50 minutes of talking. Holy shit. Yeah, so I hope the developers of Elibean Nights enjoyed this little video. Basically, I'm doing it for you guys. I'm also, of course, doing it for my viewers, but I'm doing it mostly for the developers to give you guys some good feedback. So I am absolutely tired right now. 50 minutes of talking is quite hard to do, but I hope that you guys enjoyed the review nevertheless. I can't wait to see what happens come this Fire Emblem E3 and seeing the new hacks that are on the horizon. We're definitely going to be playing more Fire Emblem 7 hacks on the channel because you guys seem to be enjoying that. But for now, I am done with Fire Emblem 7 Elibean Nights. Fire Emblem Elibean Nights. I know there's some bonus content and stuff, but I'm not super interested in that. I just wanted to play the main stories. Hope you guys enjoyed. Give this video a like and a comment if you did enjoy it. As always, my name is Mangs, and I shall see you guys next time. Goodbye.